of free therapy. I am absolutely thrilled. I hope you're staying somewhat sane in this absolutely boring apocalypse. We'll make it through together, me and you, and of course my guest today. I am excited beyond belief to get him in. One of my close personal friends. You guys can stop the search right now because I have found the sharpest tool in the shed. Be careful. Do not fuck with him or he may melt your favorite cartoon right in the head. We'll get that a little bit. Rielly, always smiling. Wall, welcome to the show, buddy. We are very excited to have you on. How the fuck are you doing today, pal?
What's up, Joey? Thanks for having me on, man. Appreciate it. Been listening for a little bit, and this is a fun opportunity. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, man, no problem. Well, it really is my pleasure. And I've had some of my close friends. I've made some new friends on this show. I can honestly say one of my very close and personal friends since about, what would you say? I mean, I've known you since we were about 8 or 9 almost. And I think we became really close, I would say, about junior year or so of high school. But I don't want to tell the story. People are tired of me basically like exploding their speakers in their car right now or at home, wherever they may be listening. So Rielly Wall, the question I ask everybody, how the fuck do you know my obnoxious ass?
Probably know you by what you just said, being obnoxious. We've known each other going on 20 years now, so it's been a long history, but I don't think elementary school I knew you too well. I mean, obviously being an Ashburn kid, hometown kid, right across the pond for me, just a short walk away. I mean, I definitely
literally our little Ashburn windmill pond.
Yeah,
absolutely. Heart. Yep.
And then maybe middle school, I definitely knew you too. And then I think high school, we definitely started hanging out more together with more of a close-knit group of friends. For whatever reason, we gravitated towards each other.
Yeah, we did, buddy.
We've stayed somewhat connected since.
Yeah, we have. We have, and we'll kind of get into all the beauties of that, and the friend that you can kind of just pick up with 3 years later and act like it was our senior year of high school, right? But question I always like to open up with is I keep it for my guests. I keep them kind of dark and in the corner, but I kind of teased it a little bit in your introduction, Rielly. The story that I think we both always love to tell, and I know you particularly love to tell when we're with a group of friends and we've been drinking a little bit together, is the story of when you came over. It's about, again, 8 or 9 years old, I would say. I think we were respectively, you were in my 3rd grade class, as we mentioned on Caroline's episode. Always pushing this for me, motherfucker. But despite all that, was that you came over and took my little toys, my little action figures. I believe that some were army men, some were wrestlers, whatever the case may be. And I didn't understand the science behind it all. And listen, I won't even say I'm a victim anymore after thinking about this, Rielly. Rielly Wall went ahead, took my action figures and a stationary bike that was in my parents' basement. That's where the friends would hang out and all that. And just began to melt it by spinning the bike and putting the cartoon character's head against the bike. Now, young, ignorant, and young and more vulnerable and innocent Joey basically thought, well, this is fucking cool. I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand what is happening because I was a pretty dumb kid, still a bit of a dumb adult. And I just thought it was the coolest thing that somehow this wizard was melting, you're mind-blowing me, was melting my action figures. I didn't understand the science behind it, why that was happening, the heat and the friction that it caused. No way I would. Rielly, not even really a question. Do you care to just kind of take your take on that side of things? Address, defend, whatever may be.
I have not even thought about that until right now. I mean, you're bringing back like a flood of memories. That is hilarious. I was probably like, oh my God, your toys are stupid. I'm going to melt the faces off of them as quick as possible. Joey, oh man, I have not thought about that moment for a very long time. Why I did it? Just because I was mean. I just wanted to do mean stuff to people. I've grown up plenty since then. Like I think one part of the reason why maybe we weren't good friends during middle school is because I probably played into treating you like crap. at some points, which was not fair because you got it from a lot of different areas, a lot of different avenues.
Sure.
Wow. No, I just did some destructive, dumb shit as a kid.
Well, and it wasn't even meant to. I didn't bring that up to bring up any of that by any means. Again, at the time, I just thought it was super cool. And also to back up Rielly here a little bit in preface, we were 8 and 9 years old. You can chalk it up to the traditional boys will be boys. I know Me Too kind of crushed some of that, but I think this is a perfect boys will be boys that's still appropriate in 2020. Yeah, I mean, again, no ill will on my part by any means. We don't have to go into the whole avenue. Go back and listen to previous episodes on the toxicity of friends to go listen to the whole reputation that Rielly is talking about there. And maybe in some senses that it was deserved to me as I was a jackass on my own right. But all that in mind, Rielly, we ended up where we did, buddy. And I think, again, one of my nearest and dearest friendships, somebody that I hold really close to my heart, and honestly, genuinely has come very far since melting heads down in my basement, some kind of evil dictator, as he is genuinely one of the kindest, truly one of the kindest individuals I know. I mean that wholeheartedly, and I think everybody will really understand that by the end of this whole podcast. With all that being said, man, I mean, it is a tricky thing to navigate, as we just kind of dove into a little bit, friendship. It is, right? And on this show, as I've already mentioned, we have talked about the toxicity of friendship. When is a friendship kind of going to literally put you in that vat of acid and drag you down with that friend? Or what friend is going to kind of elevate you and get you to kind of realize your better self, get you to kind of be the person and self-actualize is kind of all is the be-all, end-all goal for most of us, right? So with all that being said, why can, and especially in adulthood, we can get more in this in a little bit, but why is the dynamics of friendship such a tricky boat to navigate, Rielly?
Well, I think it depends on, honestly, where you start. Like the dynamics of friendship when you come from your hometown, you stay in the same place. It tends to be the same kind of insulated pocket of people that you've been with for a long time. People tend to stick with the same amount of people from elementary school all the way through high school, go off to college, and then some people come back.
Right.
I think one of the trickier things about being our age and making friends is people have their solid group of friends, but they also move to new places. Like, since I moved to a new city, I moved from Virginia to Chicago by myself, by my own free will. I voluntarily went without friends. It can definitely be tricky just navigating that, trying to break into new circles. A lot of people are really stuck on social media. A lot of people try to compare themselves to others. And I don't know. I honestly think it is hard to break into a newer friend group and to make some close personal relationships with people that you didn't have a long history with or a long background with from another place. I don't exactly know why that is, but I think it's increasingly obvious that it's difficult to make solid connections and solid friendships now, but I can't really say why. I don't totally understand it because obviously I have not totally solved it up to this point.
Right. And as we always say on the show, it is called free therapy for a reason, right? But I mean, I certainly want to have you on to kind of dig why that is, because I mean, I think you bring up a couple of things, and we'll get into kind of the whole dynamic of, like we are the high school friend or the college friend that can kind of pick up as, I don't know if you ever heard the John Mulaney bit goes of, well, you can go ahead and you can, I can call a friend and say, hey, you want to hang out Tuesday? No, sorry, I'm in Dallas Tuesday. And I don't see that friend for 4 or 5 months, and it doesn't matter at all. So there's that beautiful friendship where it doesn't matter at all, where I can maybe have a couple of beers with Rielly when he comes home from college, and I don't talk to Rielly until I do this podcast for about a year or two later, or a couple of years later, whatever the case may be. And it's just like we talked yesterday, or he's still burning the heads, maybe a little different now, not burning out the heads of my toys anymore, but rather having some beers with me and all that good stuff like we used to, or shoot the shit like we used to. But could bring it all around that. There is that kind of weird sense that I think, especially in adulthood, that doesn't get talked much about, which is the difficulty of kind of maintaining and finding that friendship that's purely a friendship, right? So meaning that's just not and there's nothing wrong with these friendships either that I'm about to mention, but whether it's a networking gain, whether it's something to pursue you to go forward in your career wise, whether it's, well, I know this person has good connections to get me into the maybe the house I want, and or whatever the case may be, okay, or maybe the next job connection, da 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 da. It's nearly impossible to find that pure friendship, right? It's nearly impossible, and almost in this adulthood, to find that pure friendship. And not to get too male-centric, but it's true, honestly, almost for males. Females, for whatever the case is, I'm not saying it's the case all one way for males and all one way for females, but have a lot easier time kind of making that new friendship into adulthood than males do. And it's, is it the psychology behind, okay, well, we think that there's no purpose in making pure friendship anymore, that we just kind of have that dog, toxic masculinity vision of, I just want to move and propel myself forward, and I want to be the strongest male I can, monster trucks, ESPN Sports Center. Whatever. But is it that case behind it? What, I mean, if you ask me, I think it's a mixture of that, Rielly. So what do you think the psychology behind all that really is?
I mean, when I go into a situation where I try to make a new relationship with someone, I don't have ulterior motives in mind. I don't think about, well, this person can help me get a job, or this person can help me break in and like meet a new girl or something like that. No, I think there is definitely a genuine desire for friendship without any other motive to get you anything.
100%.
At least for most people. I think some people do have an agenda, whether it's like business oriented. They can network with someone who can help them get promoted in a company, or rise in their job, or kiss ass to some kind of boss. But I think it is generally genuine. And I mean, especially during this time, when even if you want to try to go out and make friends, how the hell can you? There's not even social events going on. So even if you wanted to try to network with someone or try to make connections with your coworkers, or say some kind of sports group, like there's a hell of a lot of sports teams in Chicago that I could join, obviously not now. But all of those are definitely genuine. I don't think that anyone there has
sure
agenda to make money off of someone or for a business interest or anything. I tend to think that I think that people are good people for the most part, and 100%. I try to read that wholeheartedly. And then I read Twitter, and that's just that is just the dregs of the earth. I think social media does have some part of it that kind of shows you that what you're doing is kind of wrong. Like there's an ideal to aspire to, but it's sometimes doesn't seem like it's attainable.
Well, I think it's the kind of the classic here, as I hear you talking, right? I think it's kind of the classic, the devil and the angel on your shoulder. Religious beliefs, whatever they may be aside here, people, but it's the classic devil and angel on your shoulder, right? So meaning that at one point, I think we all kind of have that pure want. Most of us have that pure want of a friendship, right? To have that closeness with somebody, to kind of have somebody we, at the end of the day, I can call and say, Rielly, I had a fucking shithole of a day, or Rielly, I had an amazing day, right? We all need that person. I think it's very vital for anyone to kind of have that person that you can have that platonic sense of just camaraderie with, right? I think that's absolutely crucial. But and then there is that kind of mean sense of whether it is a, moving forward in networking, and whether that is kind of the subconscious, mistaken subconscious desire. I don't think it's intentional or forefront by any means, but I think there is that element of anybody in the back of the brain. Not only that, I also think of just purely, you mentioned Twitter, and then a kinds of perspective of initializing or kind of projecting your insecurities onto other people. Is what I think social media is. So when you see somebody do that in adulthood, and that Twitter views have ruined friendships, adult friendships even, for lifetimes, buddy, for lifetimes. And it's only been around for a couple of years. I mean, it's incredible at the power of what it has. So I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a landmark, and I think it's a combination of all three of those factors. I think that, yes, there is that pure want and need of the friendship, but then life kind of comes in and says, fuck you a little bit sometimes, right? It really does. And it's like, well, okay, I want to be, here's my new buddy I made at work. And it turns out, we get beers after and I'm really close with him. And then all of a sudden I see that he's on he's with Alex Jones and thinks that the government's they're putting water in the frog, or putting water in the poisonous water. Jesus Christ, if I can talk here today. Putting poisonous water to make the frogs gay. So I find out my buddy thinks that Alex Jones is absolutely correct and that the government's putting water to make the frogs gay. Not the case whatsoever, but that's going to break up a friendship. Now, that's an extreme example, but that's not somebody I want to maintain a friendship with anymore. So now it becomes kind of the guide of, I kind of need to be aware on all levels. Right now, I need to, not just like when I'm, going back and forth on Tinder and I get that last name, just like anybody else does, we do that kind of quick Google stock. Now I need to do the same thing with my friends. Is my friend an Alex Jones nut job? Then my daughters are gonna starve. My neighbors won't starve. I watched this man. He's fucking insane. He's the one person I can do an impression of. Anyway, moving on. So what is the issue? I mean, so what do you kind of, as I go on my rant, what do you kind of getting your head out of the water and now knowing that you kind of got to research those, in a sense, kind of research and truly know those friends, that makes it impossible. Why do I even want to put the effort to a friendship then? It almost makes it exhausting.
Yeah, I think it can definitely be confusing and off-putting if you become friends with someone, find them on social media, and find out that some things they've commented on or some things they've been involved with don't align with your views or your ideals. I mean, anything dealing with politics is incredibly polarizing, which I don't really think it needs to be. I think we can all be way more chill about talking about politics.
Just to interject for 1 second, I'll let you go. I think a beautiful friendship is a friendship that can talk about religion and politics, but not have it destroy that friendship. Now, whatever, I know you're not supposed to talk about politics and religion, and that's frowned upon, but I've always kind of been in that opposite boat, where if you can talk about it openly, it needs to be talked about. Those are two topics, and we talked about this, I think, way back on the show. If you don't talk about those things, how does it progress not only those issues forward, hopefully, but you two as individuals to not only strengthen your friendship, but yourself as well?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I mean, I think that talking about things that are divisive, like religion and politics, can help you have a stronger friendship. I'm not a part of any religious belief system or religious organization, but like religious organizations are some of the tightest knit social groups that we have in our culture across the world. The opposite is not so much true, like a tight-knit social group that is against religion or outside of religion. But talking about things can be incredibly helpful. This is kind of a question I have for you, Joey. Like, I don't know if you want to stick with all the questions, but I think something would be helpful.
No, we don't have to. I think we've already kind of gone off the map here a little bit. I'm totally fine. I like where we're going, so roll with it, buddy.
For listeners, just to get a sense of kind of where I'm coming from, I think that listening to other people talk about personal problems can obviously make you feel better about your own problems.
Absolutely.
I don't usually hear people talk about these challenges, like being an adult or being a 27-year-old in that late 20s, early 30s time of life, talking about these challenges. So I have plenty of examples that I could give that are kind of the reason why I was interested in doing the show and that could maybe help someone else relate to. If it's cool with you, like I can just explain some of those things and kind of how I've gotten to this point.
Yeah, man. I think that would be kind of great to kind of set up the difficulty of the dynamics of those friendships a little bit more. But one last thing I did want to touch on before we kind of go off is that, that it is a combination, I think, ultimately, especially in adulthood, of all those things. And it doesn't have to be politics either. That can be kind of be the poles, like you mentioned. It can be sometimes a religious thing. It can be even something as, I don't like Billy Bob and you like Billy Bob sometimes, unfortunately, in this day in the world. But I think it's a combination of all of those. There is that pure intent of I just want a friendship and I need that camaraderie. But then there is that kind of selfish intention of I want to move myself forward somehow. And then at the same time, the difficulty in maintaining is just kind of the millions of different factors in life itself, whether it is political, religious, or just petty, right? So I think that's some of the kind of basic overall dynamics, but I think you're right. I think it would help a lot, and we're kind of curve into this, so I'll let you go, Rielly, is getting that personal perspective has absolutely helped kind of build and how we can navigate through that tricky boat that is those dynamics. So take off, buddy. Kind of help us understand where you got.
So I'm going on 4 years that I've been in Chicago this middle of July. And I moved here because when you go to a new place, there's a lot of push and pull factors, like factors that push you out of that place and attractive things that make you want to come there. I'd never thought about living in Chicago, actually living here as a kid. I always came here for Thanksgiving. But then at the end of college, I figured, like, I want to get the hell out of Virginia.
Don't blame you.
If you're from Virginia or you're from Northern Virginia specifically, you can understand why. Like, there's a lot of things that can kind of like maybe keep, what I would explain is keep you stagnant. Like, obviously there's a lot of opportunities there, but if you stay in the same place, you can kind of fall into the hole of doing the same kind of routine for a really long time.
It's the love and the hate of the bubble we've talked a little bit about in the show.
Yeah, exactly. It's hard to break out of too. You're comfortable. You don't want to do something that's scary and new. So I moved here without a friend group, which was definitely tough. I lived with my cousin for a bit. My cousin, he's in his 40s, and his wife and kids. Then I moved out on my own to my own place. And at that point, it's like you had a strong group, tight-knit group of friends in high school, strong group of friends in college. I was in a fraternity. I was in another organization. I was in a third organization where I had friends. And then you leave that state, and it's like, oh, man, shit. What do I do now?
Right.
How do I navigate going into a social group and making those friends? So anyway, this could be a long story, but
go into it, man. We're here for it, please.
So our mutual friend Derek from high school, who was a pretty good friend of mine when I was in Virginia,
and is on a mystery episode of Free Therapy that will never air. I'll tell you about that off air. I love you, Derek, but that will never air.
Derek is a character, but he is definitely someone who I found was a good connection in Chicago. So
sure.
Ended up hanging out with him a good amount, and then through a mutual friend of his, I ended up meeting who was my ex-girlfriend. We were together for 2 years. We had a long, solid relationship, and that was kind of my insulated group. And when you're in that group, you kind of think to yourself, I think this is something that a lot of people could relate to if they're in this situation. Being in a relationship, you're content with that person. You may not try to open yourself up, do new things by yourself, like independently, go and join another group, go and do cooking class, go and do sessions without your significant other. I didn't do that. I didn't even make the effort.
You're codependent.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't make the effort too much. My girlfriend at the time, she didn't so much either. I mean, I know that she was a social person. She liked being with others, but wouldn't seek out those new friendships and those kind of more maybe scary things to do with a new group of people. So in your head, you think, this is going to last for a long time. I'm going to be with this person. We'll make friends on down the road. And you kind of keep pushing it and keep pushing it. And then
I'll do it tomorrow kind of mindset, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't feel too bad. Like, you're not sad about missing out on people because eventually I'll connect with other people. And then the time comes where your relationship breaks down. You are quickly single. You break up with someone, and then you really feel lost. Like, even that slight opportunity I might have had to make friends on down the road with this person by her own personal connections, or us doing something together and opening up a new group, it's just gone.
Right.
And after that, it can really leave you with a confusing feeling. Like, it has made me feel like I've done something wrong, which I know is not the case. And like, obviously you have a relationship with me where you could see, like, I have had a good group of friends and I am an easygoing person. I can do this easily. And it just puts you at a place which is just hard to understand.
Well, thank you for sharing that, man. I think that's a tough story to share, very vulnerable story to share, but I think a very necessary story to share, because I think there are a lot of people. You mentioned earlier, well, I didn't really know, or I didn't really feel like there was a lot of people that have difficulty making friends at 27. I think, one, yes, there is, and two, there's a lot of people that had difficulty at that point you were at making friends, and that point that you're still kind of coming back from. And it's, for lack of better reference, you were kind of joeyed meaning Joey from Friends, meaning you got your own spinoff. And it lasted one season, and then you kind of felt lost after, right? It was all going. You were the hottest show on the network. Everybody loved you. You could, you had your classic catchphrase, "How you doing?" and all that good stuff. But
there was a spinoff with Joey. That shows how irrelevant that show was. I don't remember that at all.
Meaning you got Joey. So you were all on the Friends ride, and then you got your own spinoff, and you felt lost once you got the spinoff. So how do you recover from the show Joey, and get episodes and become relevant again, which is what Matthew LeBlanc did, and it's a pretty good show if you ever checked it out. Anyway, with all that being said, when you get Joey'd, this is the metaphor we're going to go with here. It can be very difficult. You kind of feel like you're in that corner. You're in that dark corner of the cave, and you don't really know how to get out. Rielly, and I didn't expect to really, because I am lucky enough to where I am still in that bubble, and I still do have a couple friends from our high school that one I even live with, that I can still talk to when things are feeling low and when I'm feeling a little down. So I'm incredibly fortunate at that. But I remember, and I've talked about this on the show before, back in 2017 when I broke up with somebody that consequently cheated on me, and this was a whole different scenario, and we don't have to get into all that. But I remember feeling like, one, I can't talk to anybody. Like, nobody's going to understand, nobody's going to relate, and nobody's going to give a shit, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to, like we talked about in Caroline's episode, I'm going to get under my blanket and let Depression Kitty hang out with me, right? I think one of the things that's crucial to get you through that moment is you got to put yourself back out there in one way or another. Like you mentioned, doing those activities out on your own. Well, now you can't really push it back anymore, right? You can't. That's how you find your AKA episodes, which is a successful show that Joey came after, of Matthew LeBlanc. That's how you find your success actor, right? Is kind of putting yourself back out there again. And I think that can be an incredibly harrowing thing to do. And Rielly, I know you're starting to do that now. So if you could kind of just tell me, how did you kind of begin to dig yourself out? One, to make yourself feel like, hey, I'm fucking awesome. I'm Rielly Smiles all the damn time Wall. You can't stop me. I will never suffer defeat anymore. Here I'm going to soar. That's all the rhymes I'm going to do. But yeah, I mean, seriously, tell me, what did you kind of do to pick yourself back up again?
I don't think there's anything like any magical solution. I think it's just honestly baby steps. You gotta tell yourself that you're gonna be okay, and you gotta tell yourself that getting outside and doing something social will make you feel better. I think one specific example is going to the gym. Before this whole pandemic started, I was going to the gym pretty frequently. I was going to a gym for my sister got me some gift cards, so I had free sessions, and then I saw some people getting private work done, like with a personal trainer. So I was like, all right, what's that? I should do that. So I paid for these 8 classes, and going to the gym kind of made me feel confident. Just like being out in public, I felt better about myself. I've always been a skinny person. I don't actually like lifting weights, but I did it for a little bit because it made me feel good. I think endorphin rush, and I don't know, just feeling more confident. And so that kind of led me into thinking I should go out and seek things out on the Meetup app. But here's the thing which feels a little, like you were saying, vulnerable. This is the most awkward feeling for me. When you have a group of friends and you say you're with a group of friends at a bar and you see stragglers, like a single person by themselves, you think, oh, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the guy who's sitting by themselves, who doesn't have a group of friends. This group. Well, when you're on the other side of that, it's like, well, shit, there's nothing wrong with me. I know I'm sitting by myself in this group, but I am the person who's trying to make that effort. Here's some examples that I can give you, which I'm not embarrassed by much. I really don't have a problem saying these things. I have definitely been the guy to go to a bar by themselves, order
right there with you, buddy.
And yeah, exactly. And look to your left, look to your right, try to catch someone's eye, try to make some stupid joke to butt into a conversation, do all kinds of things like that just to get your foot in the door and to try to make that connection with people. And as much as I think it's going to work a lot of times, I think you got to try 100 times for it to work well. a meaningful connection once.
Yeah, to interject for a moment, you're right, man. I mean, it's kind of like I don't know how much Planet Earth you like to watch, buddy, or how much Animal Docs you like to watch, but it's kind of like that. Like, well, why is that? Why is that? Certain lion not in the pack, right? Why is he outside the pack? And sometimes it's that lion's sick, that lion's injured somehow, that lion did something to, endanger the den or the pack or whatever the case may be. I think wolf may be a better example. Semantics. Anyway, with that being said, is that's kind of the more straight traditional line is why is that lion all by itself, and why are all the lions others shying away, right? And there may not be anything wrong with that lion or the wolf or whatever the case may be. And it's very, very hard with that pack instinct kind of mentality, which humans kind of naturally have themselves too, right? To break into that pact and to kind of initiate a new friendship. I remember myself too. And this was a simple. I was going to a lot of bars by myself just to kind of get away and think. I mean, to be perfectly honest, when I went through this initial breakup, and I remember the same kind of thing, going up to people and just trying to butt in about, sports conversations and go, oh, you guys are Cowboys fans, blah, 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 and try to go in from there. And it's like you have like a target on your back, or you're like, you literally were the starter of coronavirus, and they just want to stay as far away. You're that bat, right? And you want to stay as far away from you as possible. And I know that's not how it started. I'm not going to get into all the debates of that. I'm just making light here. With that being said, man, it can kind of be the movie I always go to, and I talked to you a little bit about this off air, is I Love You, Man. Basically, this is a movie with Paul Rudd and Jason Segel. For those of you that haven't seen it, check it out. It's hilariously dumb. It's great. And Paul Rudd, his whole life was just focused on the relationship, as you mentioned, right? Never kind of went out and did those activities on his own. Was very kind of codependent, right? And didn't have any groomsmen for his wedding, and or at least just wanted a best man, right? He had a couple, I think he had a couple distance groomsmen, whatever, but didn't have someone he felt could name his best man. And he literally, it showed exactly what you did, Rielly. He went out and took guitar, like pulled a thing for guitar lessons, learned guitar from a guy, went to record shops and started comparing music with guys, went to bars, did the same thing we tried to do. And it went hilariously awful for him, right? Until he met and did indeed, and because there is a silver lining here, and did meet Jason Segel. Now, granted, that friend was batshit crazy, and insanity ensued, or it wouldn't be a film. But the point of the film was he did, in fact, find that friend, and kept that friend for a long time. That was his best friend. So there is a line at the end of the light. We're not by any means saying either two, that you can't do this, that you're just going to be that, that black sheep forever, that's not going to be in the herd, or that I think a better example would have been, by the way, these Japanese Swiss monkeys. Japanese Swiss out monkeys, Rielly, and they actually have a class system. And now you know what I'm talking about, right? If you don't, look it up after this conversation. But the first class monkeys or the high class monkeys are in this hot tub. Middle class monkeys, I swear to God, look this up. It is on Planet Earth. I'll send you the clip after this. People, look this up. The middle class monkeys essentially like bring them food and leaves and stuff like that. And then the lower class monkeys are at the bottom of the springs. And it's incredibly fascinating, but you can get to the top of the springs. I think that's a better example than the wolves and the lions. That's why I had to mention it. You can be that monkey that gets to the top of the spring, or that has that internal friendship. You absolutely can. It's just, it takes some digging. It takes some belief in yourself. You got confidence in yourself. Know that you're an awesome person. You don't have, mold growing on your back or a big fucking tail that keeps people away from you. It's either sometimes you've been through a rough patch, like Rielly was saying, like I was as well, or sometimes it's just you moved to a new city, or you're in a new, completely different scenario, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, absolutely. That's funny you bring up animals, because I am a public school teacher, and I mean that's the best.
Thank you, by the way.
Oh, of course. Hell yeah. My job has changed significantly over like the last 2 months, of course. Now I do online teaching. Super weird. But kids, of course, are missing out on that social dynamic of interacting with groups. But man, I see that social structure, that kind of class structure, even in a second grade classroom. Some kids are kind of ostracized, but they don't know why. when there's a group of kids who are closer. I've been a fifth grade teacher too, when it becomes even more intense, when the girls are super catty with each other. They're friends with each other for a minute or a day, and then they do something mean, and they're not friends, and they go back to being friends.
Right.
All that is stupid and frivolous as it sounds. It is really important for kind of developing your social skills at that time. But at this point, like you're kind of saying, there's no reason why like I should feel like I'm the pariah like outside of a group.
Right.
There's not a lot of reasons that I can come up with for why I can't make a meaningful friendship with a group of people other than access. I mean, you got to keep putting yourself out there, keep doing things to reach out. But it's tough. It definitely is. And if I had solutions for it, I would have figured it out by now. And like you're saying, like going back to being more of an optimist, I'm not saying that like anyone who's listening to this, I want to lay these things out here because I think it's helpful to be able to relate to someone if you are feeling things like this. And just like I tell my students, the feelings you're having right now, whether it's feeling sad or lonely or just a little bit unsure what the future is going to look like, I have those feelings too.
Yeah.
So I just want to tell people it's okay to be feeling that way. It is confusing, but I just see it as part of my life, and I know it'll get better eventually, but it definitely takes some effort. You're not going to be successful without trying.
Yeah, I think that's really, really well put, man. I mean, I really do, because something I've been kind of learning myself as we go on season 2 here of Free Therapy is, and something I want to make clear to all my listeners, because I know sometimes I get a little ranty and I'll talk out of my ass, and again, it's free therapy for a reason, right? And sometimes I get on this rant, who knows what the hell I'm saying, but I think we do this show because it brings, in a sense, a lot of good, despite us not being experts by any means, right? And we're not claiming we're experts. I'm not claiming this is an all-be-all. This is the ticket. This is the magic key. And I want to make that very clear, right? I want to make that very, very clear. I'm by no means an expert. Rielly's by no means an expert. I think it's crucial to have these talks with people that aren't experts and that can kind of give that everyday thinking that everyone is having, to know that everyone's going through these types of feelings. That's the purpose of free therapy, Rielly. And I think you just kind of hit it in the nutshell, is to know that we're all going through these things, whether we're discussing the dynamics of friendships or anxiety or overthinking or whatever the case may be that week. Is you got the quintessential right there, Rielly, is that it's not, I'm not telling you here I have the magic pill. I'm not the snake oil salesman by any means. And I'm not and I'm not Freud either, okay? So keeping all that in mind.
Did you say Freud, Joey?
I did say Freud, and I'm not Freud.
If you're saying like he's the pinnacle of what you should be looking at for solving your problems, maybe
and I'm not Oprah. Take whoever you want to take here, okay? Don't bog down on the analogy too much for me. Somebody that's big in the psychology realm or in the helpful realm, okay? But with all that being said, it's just the average person take, just like what you were thinking. What sometimes I think people are too scared to say or difficult to put in words, or just need that extra push of courage. That's the point of free therapy. Let you know you're not alone. We're here together, and whether it's kind of going and landscaping those tricky dynamics of friendship or whatever the case may be, we're here with you. We're here with you.
Good reminder.
For one of my other raps. But man, I think honestly that kind of puts a perfect bow. It really does on it, Rielly. You kind of cultivated it all for me. You really did, buddy. I mean, besides that, the one last thing I did want to touch on before we go away here is, what is the kind of, we talked about that dynamics, and yes, you're not alone on this, and that everybody kind of goes through those feelings, and just be bold, be brave, and know that you're a kick-ass person, and you're not that person with the target on their back. But what is I want to go back to the John Mulaney bit for a second, right? And that is you don't talk to a certain friend for 4 or 5 months or a year or two, and then you talk to him again, and it's like it never changed. Me and you right now. Right? Me and you right now, and plenty of other friends like that. What do you think that kind of is, man? I have college friends like that, high school friends like that, but in adulthood, it's almost like that psychology kind of stops.
Yeah, I think it's like what I was saying earlier about the classroom dynamics and your socialization when you're a
Mhm.
kid. We have a deep rooted connection. I've known you for like, say, like 19 years now. That memory, those memories of childhood, I connect that with knowing you. So the positive memories that I had when I was younger, now I associate with you every time I see you. Or someone from back home, like some of my best buddies that are maybe still in Ashburn or have moved across the country. I think there's something deep rooted inside of you that you associate your positive experiences from childhood with that person. And that's all through school, too. I mean, of course, most of your socialization happens, for at least in American culture, happens in school. There's something inside of you that brings up positive memories and positive experiences when you even think of that person. Um, I know I shared an example of this with you when we were off air, but I have an example of a good friend that I was not so good friends with in high school, and then became really, really, really close, like inseparable friends with in college.
Mm-hmm.
In the fraternity together, we did most things together. I mean,
Let's
all
call him Puffy Chest.
I was
That was a
forgetting.
joke just for Rielly. So, free therapy listeners, that was a joke just for Rielly.
Granted, I'll definitely say, like, if I saw this person now, I would still love to see him, and I would love to reconnect with him. But for whatever reason, we went from being friends in high school to being really, really tight, close friends in college, and then after college, that kind of fizzled out and quickly. And if anybody's listening to this and they can maybe relate to this, this is a confusing thing, and I don't know why it happens, but it's definitely a real thing that you can have a solid connection with someone that didn't exactly start when you were super young. That was kind of cultivated in the college years when you're becoming an adult, and then quickly stop. I don't understand why those things happen, but I don't know. Sometimes it does happen. I think the close knit group of friends that I did have from childhood, like including you, I could pick back up with easily. And I think that's just something that's deep rooted in your brain from a young age, that you think, oh, I had fun with this kid when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. It'll continue to be a positive thing when I'm older. At least that's the hope.
Right. And I think you kind of tackled the other side of that, right? Of what I was mentioning is that there is, and we kind of talked about this on the Toxic Friends episode, is there is that kind of thing that fizzles out as well. And sometimes it's the obvious reason of, like we talked, that friend that's dragging you back down the vat of acid. And there's a mutual friend I can think of that was like that and just had to go. Now, you kind of made me think of some. I got to kind of be tricky because I'm kind of going through this right now and how I word this, but I don't think this person really listens to the show. And if they do, they're not getting all the way to this point. So, so I'm going to mention this still subtly, though. There's a friend that kind of similar to you, that I was a little bit different situation. I was actually close with in high school, college, and even a little bit afterwards in adulthood. Now, the problem I'm having is it's just a straight up fizzled out connection, period. So kind of same thing where it's just we don't talk. It just kind of stopped. I know for there are a couple outlying reasons, but at the same time, it's I want to speak more to, and where I relate to you on is that kind of weird feeling of it just stopping because, like you mentioned, you kind of had that root in you of when you were a teenager, when you were a kid, and I know that that's not exactly the case with the person you're mentioning. But it is that deep rooted psychology where it hurts much more when you do on the spectrum of we're talking about right now, when that friendship fizzles out for whatever reason that you were friends with for going on a decade, that you grew up with those foundations together, that you learn stuff together with, you build things together with, versus an adult friend that you've known for maybe 2 or 3 years. It's just there's not that same kind of dynamic, right? So it's a weird, eerie feeling for sure, man. And it's something that unfortunately, it just kind of happens. It's a that fizzles out, and I think normally I like to say it fizzles out for a reason, but unfortunately, sometimes it just kind of moves across the country, gets a new girl, you name your reason, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it all depends on your level of effort trying to maintain that friendship. At least the person that I'm thinking of, like, I had seen even sometimes in college where we became friends with someone, we had a connection with them, and then maybe I stayed better friends with them or he stayed better friends with them. And for whatever reason, one of us fizzled out. And that's okay. And this is the way that I genuinely feel about it. Okay. Or I feel about it now. I'm appreciative of the time we spent together. I love the experiences that we had together. I don't feel bad. I don't feel like I'm missing out on much by not maintaining that friendship. I think that's a good reminder for people too. Like if you do have that solid friendship that does fizzle out, try not to get too caught up about it, or try not to get too hung up on it, because what are you really missing out on? I mean, if that person, both of you weren't going to make the mutual agreement to continue that friendship, then I don't think either of you are missing out on too much.
It wasn't beneficial in a pure friendship sense anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe we could pick back up. I think that if I were to see this person again, I would pick up with him quickly. We would be friendly with each other. We'd be able to spend time with each other and have a good time, but maybe it wouldn't last. And that's okay. That happens in life too.
Yeah, man, I think that's really well said, and I think it's kind of a fascinating psychology behind that with those more long-term friendships. Like I know me and you right now could probably literally sit and talk all day, just like this, without an issue, man. But one thing I do want to say, and I want to go back to with kind of final thoughts here. I want to kind of go back to one interesting point that we kind of touched on for a moment, but kind of got off railed. And I think it's a very, very interesting dynamic. And I gave you my whole class system I found it with the Japanese Swiss out monkeys. So I just kind of want to touch, and I kind of want your thoughts on this, because we just briefly did. It's pure. It is. We kind of are. That's those dynamics you talk about, like the girls bickering each other, or the other girl that's in the corner of the class, or whatever the case may be, or the boys picking on the unathletic kid. As I always got picked last back in the days, you may remember during recess, buddy, and things like that. That is at its pure value. You have to remember we're still animals too. We are still animals too, and that is our very much animalistic instinct kicking in when it comes to that, right? You pick on the weak, and the weak don't survive. Unfortunately, that's how it is in animal culture. It sounds very brutal, but I think that there is that animalistic element, especially when you're younger, to that dynamic of friendship as well.
Yeah, I think there is, and I think that too. I think I would, when I was younger, I was a little bit more brutal in thinking about that, like survival of the fittest. I mean, in terms of people, I would think like, oh man, if people are poor, they're gonna stay poor. There's no reason like we should be helping people out who have lesser or have less than us.
That's kind of the Ashburn mindset too, a little bit itself.
It kind of is. You can fall into that, even if you don't come from money. Like my family doesn't. Having a single mom, like raising 4 kids, we didn't have a ton of money, but I was surrounded by it all the time. I know you touched on this when on Caroline's show too. You see this group of people around you who seem to have more than you and seem to have better than you. So that class system is created really, really quickly. And you might not even be thinking about it or be conscious of it when you're in high school, but it's real. It's real, and it is hard to break out of a certain group or break into another group. I kind of pride myself on this, though, that when I was in high school, I feel like I could kind of navigate multiple groups of people. I skateboarded, which is kind of like always seen as somewhat of an outsider type of activity, not like an organized team sport. But then I did play team sports. I was friends with some kids in a group who would be considered like the cool kids. But it's tough. It's definitely tough for people to break into a group, or maybe even someone who's in that cool kid group but doesn't want to admit that they don't actually like the people they're hanging out with. Maybe they want to hang out with another group. Because when you think about systems, I don't know if you agree with this. A lot of times, being in a group, you kind of think like, I want to get to that next higher group or that cooler group, or whatever. But what about the kid who's in that cool group who thinks like, these kids suck?
I fucking hate those people, right? Well, I think that you bring up a good point, and me and Caroline kind of did touch on this, and she mentioned too. And for those of you that didn't listen to her episode, go back and listen to it if you get a chance. But after we're finished listening to this one, obviously. But that is that she, I didn't really find my group until senior year that I actually liked, and she even kind of admitted that I was kind of in that, go up the ladder kind of mindset. And I think we even have that today in corporate America or in you name it. And I'm a self-perceived comedy nerd, and I talked about here a little bit on the show. I do my stand-up on the side. But I listen to more podcasts that would burn your brain out with comedy, and it's the same kind of dynamic where it's, well, this person can't really have a seat at the table, and because they hang out with these people, and well, at the same time, this person, you can tell this person absolutely hates that improv group they're in, or whatever the case may be, or more so, same thing in Coca-Cola. I want to crack on the board of Coca-Cola. Well, good fucking luck cracking in that chairman board of Coca-Cola, right? Because people have these seats and they've broken in, and there could be some guy that said, we're the worst company in the world. We are apps. I mean, I don't think Coke's that bad. Maybe Apple or Google would be a better example, where we're doing slave labor, children slave labor, whatever the case is. I hate it. Extreme examples here, Rielly, but you get what I'm going with, right? So that's something, too, that I think can be is at our core animalistic value that builds even our economy, that builds those social dynamic groups to this day. And I think will forever play a part in that, which can make it even more tricky to navigate through. Whether, again, it's corporate America or sitting at the cool kids table. Same thing.
Yeah, it's true. It's pervasive across all cultures. There's, I don't know, even if you wanted to have like a neutral group of people, I honestly don't think it's possible to say like we're going to have a community that we see as equitable, that everyone sees like people ignore race or whatever, people ignore gender, people ignore socioeconomic status. I think like I'm pretty liberal with most of my thoughts, but that is like just nonsense. I don't think that that's actually possible to have a society where people are just completely neutral. There's a power struggle. There always is. Like going back to what you're saying with the monkeys. We're all just monkeys. We're just monkeys trying to make friends and trying to be the cooler monkey. And as much as we try to get away from it, I don't think we can. I think it's natural. And it's okay sometimes. You just got to find your weird monkey group.
You really do. There's a reason communism didn't work, right? So yeah, you gotta find your weird monkey group, and at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're in the hot springs or you're out there grinding below the hot springs doing the people's work. Find your monkey group, find yourself, and I think ultimately that's how you navigate through that tricky boat of friendship dynamics. As it always boils down here to free therapy, be your confident most self you can and get through this tricky fuckscape world that will that will keep you on your toes always. Rielly, any final thoughts, buddy?
I really appreciate this, man. This has been a pretty isolating time. I live by myself. I have a cat who is a great buddy, but he's not a person. His name is Nibbles.
Nice. Solid name. Quality name.
Thank you. Thought of it myself.
12 out of 10 cat name, buddy.
I can't name a cat something stupid like Tom or Frank. Like, come on.
My dad's name's Tom, buddy. And you knew that.
He's not a cat. I'm not saying it's a stupid name. It's a stupid name for a cat. You got Sprinkles or Cupcake or something like Nibbles, like adorable.
Right. Something lovable.
Yeah, but what I was saying, Joey, this is really helpful. Like, as a reminder, again, just to be able to relate to people. We're all going through this. I get to see my friends on the outside who are adults, but then I also see the impact on children right now, that as much as we didn't talk about coronavirus, it is very real right now. It is still happening. It has a real impact on people, and this is cathartic, being able to tell people how I feel, because when you kind of perseverate on things, you talk about it, you go over it over and over, it starts to suck. And being able to talk about it out loud feels really nice, and I appreciate this. This is the longest conversation we've had in years.
Yeah, and, it's nice. It's long overdue.
Yeah, it feels great. I'm really glad we did it, and this is fun.
Yeah, Rielly, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. You absolutely killed it, buddy, and I think a lot of people will benefit from what you shared with us today, and I think a lot of excellent perspectives. And again, the kind of theme I think we hit on today, and I mean, really want to express to people too is, again, we're not experts by any means. Don't get that confused. Again, I'm not here to sell you that magical. I'm not here to sell you the pill that will cure all gays and will cure America for forever and make it great again. It's me, Alex Jones. And instead, I'm just here to give you an average conversation. I think a pretty above average conversation with two pretty average people that don't know shit really and are just kind of talking about how they feel. Probably, hopefully, maybe how you're feeling a little bit too. And that's it. Besides that, as always, please go DM at Four Corners Radio right now to be under the all-star cast that will kick your ass. Is Free Therapy, Bread and Butter, Last Nice Guys, Hoopin' and Hollering, Face of the Franchise, Degenerates Are Us, and am I missing any, Rielly? Let's see. I know they're probably screaming at me right now, but I don't believe I am. I believe I am good. So go DM at Four Corners Radio right now to start the podcast of your own. A great activity, as I've been saying this last couple weeks during all this craziness, to keep your mind busy, is start a fucking podcast. Get your voice out. I'm just doing my thing, and I'm happy to do it, and I think you will be too. With that being said, we out. Stay out, Rielly. Stop recording.